Hi there, Smart Driver, talking to you tonight about left-hand turns. As a new driver, somebody getting their license, if you're going to get into trouble, you're going to get into trouble on a left-hand turn because you're going to misjudge the gap. That's what we're talking about tonight. Dangerous. You're crossing oncoming lanes of traffic that are coming towards you. This is why left-hand turns are dangerous. And this was the question that Lawrence asked me about UPS and FedEx, that they do not allow their drivers to make left-hand turns. It's not that they prohibit their drivers from doing left-hand turns. It's the fact that their dispatching and their routing is such that they avoid drivers having to make left-hand turns and rather make right-hand turns. So for example, they come in the morning, they come to the headquarters, they pick up whatever packages they need to deliver, and the circular route that is planned through computers avoids making left-hand turns and rather makes a loop in a clockwise direction as opposed to making left-hand turns. And that's how they do that, is by using computers and avoiding left-hand turns when they're dispatching their drivers. It becomes important to judge gap. It's going to take you 6 to 12 seconds to clear that intersection, depending on how big it is on a left-hand turn. So you need a gap of 6 to 12 seconds. And new drivers, I know many drivers don't do this, but some driving instructors will take their students down to an intersection and they will get them to determine how far away a car is at 6 to 8 seconds to determine that gap. And that's the only way you can learn how to do it. It is something learned through experience. It is difficult to learn. Learning left-hand turns start in residential areas. And as I said, apologies, one of the smart drivers here asked me about the steering wheel. Go to a parking lot and learn how to use the steering wheel. Don't go out and try and figure out how much to use the steering wheel in residential areas and those types of things. It's just too difficult. Okay? Get comfortable with the primary controls in a parking lot and then go to a quiet area with low density traffic, a suburb or places like that, where you can learn how to do left-hand turns with just focusing on the vehicle. You're not too worried about traffic and other road users. And in this image, points to a pedestrian. You have to be able to see the pedestrians because the pedestrians, for the most part, have the right of way when making left-hand turns. Find your landmarks. When you're coming up in a suburb to make a left-hand turn, you need to be in line with the edge of the road onto which you're turning. That's when you start turning your steering wheel to make your left-hand turn. And make sure that you have sufficient gap of the oncoming traffic before you make your left-hand turn. And as in this image here, if there is a pedestrian, you have to give the right of way to the pedestrian. Shoulder checking, shoulder checking, shoulder checking. This is the other skill that you could put into your defensive driving toolbox that is going to significantly reduce your chances of being involved in a crash. Social driving. This is the first skill that drivers lose after getting their license. Shoulder checking. Shoulder checking, shoulder checking, shoulder checking. Every time you change directions of the vehicle, every time you move the vehicle sideways, shoulder check, shoulder check, shoulder check. And when in doubt, anytime that you turn the steering wheel, shoulder check. And sometimes you're going to have to do it 3 times depending on how long you're at an intersection. Now, people will come back to me and say, oh, I have proximity sensors, I have blind spot detectors, I don't have to shoulder check. These observation technologies that are in your vehicle are just a backup to good driving skills. Shoulder check, shoulder check, shoulder check. It's more important than being a carpenter, right? Measure twice, cut once. It's not just going and getting another piece of wood when you're driving. It could potentially save your life when you're shoulder checking. All right. 2 schools of thinking when it comes to making left-hand turns. Many driving instructors teach their students to move into the intersection. Some driving tests even require that students move into the intersection. I do not teach that, and it is not safe, and it is not the best practices. Wait at the edge of the intersection. So the landmark for that is your front steer tires on the front crosswalk line, not behind the stop line. If you're behind the stop line, you're way back, too far back from the intersection, and you can't see. The reason for that is you have a better line of sight. You don't have to shoulder check to be checking the pedestrians on the cross street. You can sit there back at the edge of the intersection. You can look over, you can see the pedestrians on that cross street, any slip lanes over there, and you can see and watch the oncoming traffic, and you can watch the traffic light. Because if it's busy at an intersection, you have to watch the traffic light. and you can turn left on a yellow light. On a driver's test, the reason that many students fail when the light turns yellow is they hesitate. They don't go the instant the light turns yellow. The instant the light goes yellow, you have to start moving straight forward into the intersection. And when you've double, triple checked that the oncoming traffic has actually come to a stop, then you can make your left-hand turn. The other reason for waiting at the edge of the intersection is you're committed to the intersection going on red. If you're sitting there and you miss it, as sometimes happens with even experienced drivers, you're sitting at the intersection, you're waiting, you're watching the oncoming traffic, you get distracted by a pedestrian or something else going on the cross street that you're watching and waiting for as well on your left-hand turn, and all of a sudden the light goes red. It's a discretionary thing. You got to make a decision about whether you're going to move through the intersection or whether you're going to sit there across the crosswalk and you're going to block pedestrians. Sometimes it's better just to wait and be across the crosswalk and annoy pedestrians who are walking around your car as opposed to moving in the intersection. But if you do get deep into the intersection or too far into the intersection on your left-hand turn, you do have to clear the intersection. Keep in mind, you own the intersection. But again, double, triple check that the oncoming traffic has come to a stop and then clear the intersection. Multi-lane roads, make sure that you're watching the vehicles and the traffic on the slip lane, on the other lanes of traffic on the other side of the intersection. Because if you come up to an intersection and there's a slip lane on the far side and you move into your left lane, there's a good chance that the person making the right-hand turn is going to drift over into your lane. Half of cars, 50% of drivers will make a turn on a multi-lane road and they will drift from one lane to the other lane. Protect yourself. Be a defensive driver by either moving in behind the other vehicle or moving in front of that vehicle. Do not merge in beside another driver because you can't trust them when you're turning. Because as I said, half of drivers drift over into the lane. Know that for the purposes of your driver's test. Left-hand turns, have a look at that video, and that will definitely help you out with learning how to do and execute left-hand turns safely. And as well, look at the podcast for passing your driver's first time, and that will definitely help you if you are preparing for your driver's test and learning the skills that you need to learn in order to be successful on passing your driver's test. And I said the number one reason that drivers are not successful in passing their driver's test is because they do not practice in and around the test center. Every test center is different for a driver's test because the signs are different, the roads are different, the traffic is different, and practice during the time of day that you're going to be taking your test. So for example, if your test is at 10 o'clock in the morning, practice in and around the test center at 10 o'clock in the morning. Not every time, right? Just once or twice, just so you know what's going on. And many test centers, so say for example, they have parallel parking that they do in the parking lot at the test center, go in on the weekends and after hours and practice doing the parallel parking at that test center. Good luck on your driver's test, and remember, pick the best answer, not necessarily the right answer. Marion, what I was saying is that when you're making a left-hand turn and there's a slip lane on the other side, so a right turning lane, you don't want to merge in behind. So you're making your left-hand turn, they're making their right-hand turn. You don't want to merge in together beside the other vehicle. You either want to slow down or speed up so that you merge either in behind that person or you merge in front of them. You don't want to merge beside another vehicle to keep yourself safe because, you result in a sideswipe crash. Now, sideswipe crashes most often result in property damage. They don't often result in injuries or deaths amongst people. So this is another piece of information in terms of defensive driving. You have the choice between a head-on collision and a sideswipe crash. Pick the sideswipe crash every time because most of the time a sideswipe crash is only going to result in property damage. It's not going to result in you getting injured and those types of things. And there's an article, Why We Should Be More Afraid of Driving. It's in the Atlantic newspaper. It was written by a journalist who was in a car crash. And I think what happened is that somebody pulled out of a side street and was making a right-hand turn, and they pulled out in front of him, and then he swerved to avoid them and drove into oncoming traffic. Well, unfortunately, the vehicle that he hit was a big jacked up truck. The truck came up over the hood of his car and then squashed the dash down, the whole dash onto his legs and of course crushed his legs in the subsequent crash that happened. So if you have a choice between a head-on crash and a sideswipe crash, pick the sideswipe crash every time. But if you are at an intersection and want to turn left, the person doing the right turn has the right of way, don't they? Not necessarily. No, they don't. Okay, Marion, they have a give way sign, a yield sign on that. Most of those right turn lanes, if you start looking at them, most of them will have a give way yield sign. And if they come in and they drift over into your lane, now again, as I said, you don't want to have a crash, right? You just want to let off the throttle. So that's the best thing to do. They don't necessarily have the right of way. They have a give way sign. And that means, not drifting into the other lane after you make the right-hand turn. But if you watch traffic, half of drivers will make a right turn on a multi-lane road and they will drift over into the left lane. Same thing, people making left-hand turns, they will right away drift over into that right lane without signaling. Lawrence, what do you think of the diverging diamond interchanges, which has no left turns at Niagara? Do you think we should make more of them? They are definitely, Lawrence, they're definitely embracing those in the United States with interchanges. And yes, for drivers, they're a little confusing at the beginning because they're, as you said, it's a diamond interchange. It's kind of an S curve going through the intersection, the interstate or freeway. And I would need to do more research on them. But as I said, there's scores of them in the United States. So they are embracing them. And I haven't been there, but maybe this summer I'll take a drive down and go through and have a look at it and see what I can say about them for sure. But definitely interesting. I didn't know we had any in Canada yet. I've seen them in the United States. The diverging diamonds to eliminate left-hand turns is comparable to the jug handles in New Jersey. And, but nobody else has put the jug handles in because of the amount of real estate. Now, the thing with the diverging diamonds is they don't take any extra real estate. They're just crossing traffic, right? Which is kind of interesting about what they're doing and eliminating left-hand turns. But they're making traffic safer. At least that's the intention of what they're doing. Whether they are making traffic safer, I don't know. It's kind of like roundabouts, right? Roundabouts has less points of conflict. They move more volume of traffic and they reduce urban noise pollution. These are the benefits of roundabouts. But then you get American engineers and Canadian engineers who are building roundabouts and they're making roundabouts traffic calming devices, right? That's a word that's right up there with Fur Baby and Playdate. It just irks me to no end because there's no such thing as a traffic calming device. And roundabouts should not be traffic calming devices. And I'll tell you exactly what they do with traffic calming devices. You have four lanes of traffic coming into the roundabout. And what they do is they take the roundabout and they make it cockeyed. They change the roundabout so that instead of coming in straight into the roundabout and turning, you come in on this kind of S into the roundabout and they make it a traffic calming device, which is completely, utterly idiotic on the part of traffic engineers. You can't make a roundabout and have it as a dual function where it's also a traffic calming device. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. And it's just a ludicrous thinking. Marion, what is a diverging diamond interchange? Yeah, diverging diamond interchanges it's an interchange where they've set up the infrastructure on the overpass over the interstate where you do a serpentine across the overpass. And the reason that they do that is to avoid left-hand turns to get onto the interstate. So most places you're going to come across the overpass. You're going to come across the overpass. You're going to make a left-hand turn onto the entrance out to the freeway. And what they've done rather is they've made a serpentine and then you come across and then you make a right-hand turn right at the roadway. We're talking about left-hand turns for the purposes of passing a driver's test. Defensive driving, as I said, if you're a new driver and you just recently got your license within the first year of getting your driver's license and you get into trouble when you're driving, you're going to get into trouble on left-hand turns. And we know the severity, we know the risk of having a crash on a left-hand turn. Some companies, UPS, FedEx, other companies will dispatch their drivers in a clockwise direction in an attempt to eliminate left-hand turns for their drivers because they know the severity and the danger and the risk involved with making left-hand turns. So I give you the best defensive driving practices to put in place to keep yourself safe when making left-hand turns. Two schools of thinking. Some will teach you to move into the intersection on making a left-hand turn. I do not teach that. I teach you to wait at the edge of the intersection. So in other words, your landmark for that is your front steer tires on the front crosswalk line. Do not wait behind the stop line. You're too far back and you cannot see into the intersection. And there's a lot going on in an intersection when you're making a left-hand turn. There's three things that you're watching. You're watching the traffic light, you're watching the oncoming traffic and determining your gap to make your turn safely, and you're watching the pedestrians and other vulnerable road users on the cross street, because those vulnerable road users have the right of way. And there are many a driver who've driven into pedestrians on the cross street when they're making their left-hand turn because of glaring sun, or they're not paying attention, or something goes awry when they're making their left-hand turn. Know that when you're turning left. And sometimes you're going to have to watch those three things simultaneously. And the reasons for staying back at the edge of the intersection are threefold. Okay. First, you have a better line of sight of seeing the pedestrians and the road users on the cross street who have the right of way. You don't have to shoulder check and look out the side when you're at the edge of the intersection. Second, you can determine your gap better because you can map and track traffic as it's coming towards you. When you start moving in straight into the intersection is when the car in front of your gap hits the stop line on the other side of the intersection. Then you start driving straight into the intersection. Finally, the last reason for staying back at the edge of the intersection when making left-hand turns is owing to the fact that you will make your left-hand turn faster. You will be in the crosshairs of the oncoming traffic for less amount of time, owing to the fact that as you're driving straight into the intersection, you're gaining speed and will be able to make your turn faster, as opposed to starting from a dead stop sitting in the intersection. Those are the reasons for staying back at the edge of the intersection. Better line of sight, better able to track and map your gap on the other side of the intersection. You can watch the traffic lights, and you're going to have more speed as you're moving through the intersection and making your left-hand turn. In Moran, speed gives you time and time gives you options. I've always remembered that from you, Rick. I've always told my drivers that as a dispatcher for school buses, yes, space buys you time buys you options, options prevent crashes. Absolutely, okay? 3 to 4 second following distance, stopping back in traffic, 1 vehicle length. That's your biggest defensive driving skill that you can put in your toolbox and use every time. Create the habit, and then after 90 days, you don't have to think about it anymore. So, Imran, that's really great that you remembered that and you're using that with your bus drivers rather. That's really awesome to hear, my friend. Left-hand turns that we were talking about tonight. Keep yourself safe. Stay back at the edge of the intersection. Observe, and don't go unless you're absolutely sure that the gap is sufficient to make your left-hand turn. If you're not sure or you're not comfortable making left-hand turns, go out with somebody that you trust, go out with a driving instructor. All of that will help you out to stay safe when making left-hand turns. 7X, if you're using your car the whole time, I recommend using the car that your driver's test and mock test. Yes, absolutely. Exactly what 7X just said there. That's brilliant. All the best. Okay, excellent. Stay safe. And remember, pick the best answer, not necessarily the right answer. Have a great night. Bye now.